Hello and welcome to Online Learning in a Hurry, guest episode 4 with my good friend Autumm Caines. Today we are talking about equitable video calls, especially live video calls. And this is one of those things that we're all getting into right now. We've all been involved in so many more video calls than maybe even some of us really wanted to. But when it comes to actually engaging with students and replacing a face-to-face classroom with a video call or anything you're going to do with an online video call, some really important things to think about. Autumm's going to give us a rundown of those today. Thanks for coming, Autumm. It's so nice to see you.
Thanks, Dave. It's great to see you too. Thanks for having me on today to talk about this.
It's my pleasure. Tell us.
So I should say the reason why I feel like I can talk about this is because of my work with virtually connecting. And if you don't know what virtually connecting is, I'm not going to get into that really, in depth, but I guess anybody coming to this just know this is doing virtual synchronous calls in some of the worst conditions possible, right? So we're working with people from all over the world, sometimes with horrible bandwidth, and we're connecting with people at conferences and noisy hallways and like some of the worst conditions that you can possibly do video calls in. And we've spent a lot of time thinking about what we call intentionally equitable hospitality. And so how do we do video calls in a way that's hospitable for, everybody, or for as many people as we can bring it in because the dirty little secret, the thing that's hard to talk about is, Dave, video calls are not equitable. They're horrible for equity, right? They require that all of us be in the same place at the same time. They require a lot of bandwidth. They require a lot of technology, just in terms of a lot of different peripherals, in terms of a microphone and a speaker and a camera and all of these different things. If any of one of those go wrong, then yeah, right? So if you don't have the right equipment, if you don't have enough bandwidth, if you don't have the time, you're in trouble.
So how do we make it better? Not best, but better.
Right. Not best, but better. So I have a blog post that I'm going to post on olea.ca later today.
Right down there.
And I'm going to outline 4 different things. So number 1 is consider the asynchronous tools and the synchronous tools and think about the best and so the affordances and the limitations of both, and figure out a balance. So that way you're using synchronous tools where synchronous tools make sense, but you're also making the best of asynchronous tools.
So that's the live stuff whenever you're talking, when everybody's here in the same room at the same time, and the recorded stuff. So balance the 2 of those things as much as you can. Not only recorded, but activities maybe that don't even require any video.
Right. So text, annotations, discussion boards, those kind of things that don't require everybody to be together at the same exact time, right?
Yeah.
So number 2, I know some people are not going to like this, but don't require attendance in your synchronous session.
Yeah.
And there's lots of things that you can do besides making it a requirement. You can make it optional, or you can even give points for attending, but have some type of alternative way for students to get those points. You could record the session and have them watch it and then comment on it later. Yes, I understand and I agree that's not the same thing, but it's an approximation just to kind of make sure that folks are being included.
Even if you're cynical about it, the fact that they've attended your live lecture doesn't mean that they're paying attention. So it's not like attendance in a face-to-face space anyway. So you really don't garner a whole lot just by them showing up, particularly if you're recording those live pieces so that people can actually watch them later, which is, for some people, particularly with adaptive needs, that can be a really nice option.
Absolutely. Number 3, stay flexible in what people share. So right off the bat, just by logging in, a lot of students are compromising their privacy in terms of using these technologies. I feel like every day a different article comes out about how some technology or another, the big one everybody talks about is Zoom, but we need to realize all of these technologies have the potential for some of these privacy concerns. So just by logging in, they're already doing a compromise. The next thing, under that same kind of genre of being flexible, don't force students to share their video. For some students, it's a privacy thing. For others, it's a bandwidth thing. And if you're having bandwidth issues, sometimes shutting off your video means that you can hear the lecture.
Yep. Yeah, and there's all kinds of reasons, like family issues. There are all kinds of things that happen inside of people's houses that, frankly, you don't need to know about.
Right.
You probably don't want to know about, frankly. And it just, again, if your purpose for doing video is to monitor what people are doing, you're probably making a mistake.
Probably.
Probably.
Another big one is the text chat, because I agree, it's a distracting. You're trying to lecture and you've got a side chat over here that's just going nuts. Some of these technologies even play a little sound every time. So you're trying to lecture and it's like boom, 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 boom. And it's super distracting. But for some folks, that's the only way that they can interact, right? If the bandwidth is so low and they have such a poor connection, that's their only way to say, hey, I have a question. So number one tip, turn off that little bonk or boop or whatever. That's usually a setting that you can turn off. Number two, this is a great opportunity for you to engage some students in the class. And so ask a student on a rotating basis to be sort of like the text moderator, to watch the text and pay attention to that, answer any questions, and then like maybe privately ping you or raise a hand to say, hey, there's something that you need to pay attention to here. There's a question I can't answer or something like that.
One of the other pieces of advice I've given in an earlier video is actually build in the time for you to quietly read the text chat. There's literally no problem with you saying, I'm going to take 2 minutes right now. Y'all can go get a cup of coffee or whatever, and I'm going to read through the text chat. You guys come back in 2 minutes, and then we'll talk about what's in there. Just build the time in. Just say what you're doing, let people know, and then focus your way through it. There's no need to hurry. You got lots of time.
Yeah, there's a real fear of dead air in these kind of spaces. Totally. And I think it's a rollover from anybody who's ever done like media studies. Like dead air is a horrible thing. It doesn't have to be, it's not that kind of environment. We sometimes think it is, but it doesn't have to be that way. Give yourself that time. Don't be afraid of those pauses.
For sure.
And that is actually a great segue into my fourth tip, which is to invite and plan interaction. Because, everybody talks about how Synchronous is great about bringing in that human element and allowing for collaboration. Another little, is anybody listening? That's great in theory. It doesn't usually happen on its own. You have to plan that. You have to bring that in. And in the blog post, I've broken this up into kind of two different sections. So techniques for small groups and techniques for large groups. So a technique for small groups is to do a round robin, where let's say you've got 10 people in a session, call those individuals out and have them take turns answering a question, representing their approach to the homework or something like that. Don't just open it up and say, what do people think about this? Nobody knows when to go first.
Does anyone have any questions?
Right. And so people will stumble over each other. So take the time to actually call people out. You can do it alphabetically. You can go backwards alphabetically, whatever you want, right? Yeah. But take the time to do that. The other option is something that I call pass the ball or pass the baton, I've heard it called, where you actually just kind of let them call each other out. Mm-hmm. So at the end of them answering the question or introducing themselves or whatever they're doing, their last task is to call on somebody who hasn't gone yet and pass the ball or pass the baton to that next person. This is also great because it means they have to be paying attention to know who's gone and who hasn't gone. So a lot of times they will, feel a little bit more like, oh, I've got to pay attention.
Because it could be coming in at any time.
Right. I could be coming in at any time here and I'm going to have to know.
So we got a blog post. We got all the information. We got the details about how to dig in a little bit deeper. Do you have any other suggestions in terms of other links and stuff in the blog post, other stuff that people can look at?
My very last one are my tips for the large groups, which you already talked about, answering in chat. The other one is a lot of these tools have breakout rooms. So
Right.
take a look at that. We've got links in there to some other articles, a great article from Mahabali and Bard Mayer from 2013 that talks about those affordances between sync and async, or when we all have to be together at the same time, or when we can play with time a little bit. So check it out.
Okay. Thank you so much for coming in and giving us some of your wisdom, Autumn, and stay safe. Wash your hands. Don't touch your face.